Hi, Rochelle Butler. Thanks for joining me again on Eat, Move, Be Healthy. Today, in another episode in our series on gut health, I'm talking to Elizabeth Cappetta. Hey, I can call you Liz. I call you Liz
Yes,
anyway.
absolutely, yes.
So Liz is joining me. Liz is a certified naturopath and a nutritional therapist and a psychotherapist.
That's right, yes.
And in a way, it's that combination of the whole nutritional element and the psychotherapy, counseling, sort of mental health element, which brings us here today, because I want us to look at the connection. There's a big connection more recently, in recent years, made between the gut and the brain, and how the health of the gut certainly does affect what's happening in the brain, and can obviously be an indication of what's going on, and perhaps cause or where a lot of mental health concerns start. But what is that gut-brain axis, and how can it be that the tummy can affect the brain? They seem so removed.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah. But if you think of the body really working as an orchestra, so everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
And they've actually found in fetus the tissue and the cells that make the brain and the gut are the same cells. So literally right from, when we're in a fetus, that link is already there.
The programming is almost slightly connected, yeah.
Yeah, they're made from the same cells. So the communication is bi-directional. So by that I mean the brain talks to the gut and the gut talks to the brain. So they're constantly in communication.
That's through, as I understand it, sort of nerve, in a way.
Yeah,
nerve,
so
and chemical levels, I guess, as well. Yeah.
The digestive system has its own nervous system called the enteric nervous system.
Okay.
And the main nerve that connects is called the vagus nerve.
Right, that's the one I know.
So the brain talks to the brain stem talks to the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve talks to the enteric nervous system.
Okay.
And then that enteric nervous system connects through to the muscles in the gut, and that so moving food along is actually a kind of it starts in the brain.
Well, I was going to say, for a lot of people who are finding this as a bit of a stretch, oh nonsense, you only have to think of when you've been nervous and the whole sensation of your tummy, or anxiety, tummy aches, your butterflies in your stomach, that whole connection, there seems to be that, an emotional, mental, emotional connection. Yeah. When we talk depression and then various degrees of anxieties, mental illnesses, any sort of emotional, mental upset can be affected or have a bearing on what's happening in the gut. I know they also talk about because the microorganisms that are affected there, and then if they aren't supporting the gut lining, there's different levels of toxicity which then affect the brain. So neurotransmitters are affected, so that can influence emotion, and also other physical attributes. And in general, it tends to be inflammatory conditions as well.
That's right. That's the key component.
Yeah.
That you just nailed there is it's inflammation.
Yeah.
So there used to be, and there still is a belief that depression is caused by not enough serotonin in the brain, which is our happy mood neurotransmitter. And when they have done studies, about 25% of people will respond well to an antidepressant, which is likely to it's looking at increasing serotonin in the brain.
Yeah.
And they may get benefit from that, but a lot of people won't get any benefit at all. And through research, they have now discovered what they call a new model of depression, which is called the cytokine model, which is looking at inflammation.
Oh, wow.
And when they've looked at people who have major depression, and they've compared their microbiota to normal controls, people who haven't got depression, they have seen a difference in the microbiome to those with depression and those who haven't. Yeah. So we know there's an issue there between microbiome being different, but also with inflammation, looking at cytokines, which are a type of inflammatory molecule in the body that's produced by the immune system. people with depression tend to have higher levels of cytokines. And what they're wondering now is it a cause of depression, or actually is it a predictor of depression?
Interesting, yeah.
So we know that inflammation is a big part of the problem, because you can have inflammation in the gut, but the problem is that inflammation, I think like you mentioned, causes a break in the barrier. I mean, if you think of the membrane, it's really like one cell thick. I like to sort of think of, you know, when we think of eating sausages, sausage skin,
it's quite thin.
It's gut lining.
Yeah.
It's animal gut lining. So that's the thinness we're talking about.
Wow.
And it's held together by what are called tight junctions.
Okay.
And it should allow very small molecules to pass through. But when we start to get openings in those gut junctions, you're getting things pass through that shouldn't be.
Now, is that leaky gut?
It's what would be colloquially called leaky gut, or permeability, gut permeability.
But then that's where we're talking. So then foreign objects are moving through almost unfiltered, undigested, and whatever. And that's the big one with the allergies and food.
Well, it can cause all kinds of problems. You know, you're talking joint problems, autoimmune conditions. It's the basis of a lot of issues.
So it comes back to
diseases and disorders.
Yeah, comes back
heart
to
disease, to, you know, inflammation. So
then again, so important then to see how to maintain the gut health becomes so important, because it's just the start of everything.
Because often this inflammation is it's low level inflammation that you wouldn't necessarily.
No.
So if we think of inflammation, you know, we think of heat, we think of redness, and we think of pain.
Yes.
So anywhere we've got any of those in the body, there's inflammation going on.
Yeah.
But often this can be more of a silent inflammation that we're not even aware is going on.
Well, particularly with, so if there's inflammation in the gut or of a certain organ, you won't necessarily feel any symptoms until it's quite safe advanced stages.
Yeah. Or they might feel like, okay, so if I've got a pain in my joint here, I wouldn't necessarily relate that to having come from the gut.
No.
But, you know, what they're also finding, so when we talk about these tight junctions, a couple of the proteins, one called zonulin and one called occludin, that regulate these tight junctions. And when these break down and when they're reactivated, they open sort of like a gap. But that's also been linked with the barrier in the blood-brain barrier as well. These same proteins, zonulin and occludin, are found in the blood-brain barrier within the endothelial tissues of the blood. So, this is what the theory is, that if we're getting a leaky gut, we're potentially getting a leaky brain as well.
So things are being able to cross over from blood into the brain.
This is where you potentially can have things like heavy metals passing through, toxins,
and
bacteria.
But that would be where the argument comes for with autism and things like that being linked with the gut.
Absolutely.
But they're saying that mental toxicity is passing through the brain.
But even Alzheimer's
is a big one.
Anything that we associate with neurological brain conditions. Potentially we've got this, blood-brain barrier breach, which, if you start getting inflammation in the brain, and you're not going to sit there and think, oh, I think I've got an inflamed brain, but it might be that you're feeling fatigue. You've got what are called foggy brain. You might not have
all symptoms that are so general that can be written off to I'm so tired. Well, I haven't had a good night's sleep in a while. Oh, I'm not sleeping well. Yeah, but that dog has been barking. You end up writing it off to all these things, but they are the. Absolutely. That's one of the big things with clients. I always say, if you notice something, body awareness is a big thing for me, because if you notice something different, I'm not saying act on every little thing, but clock it and then go, gosh, I've been moaning about that for 3 weeks now. I think we need to check that out. Or because it's always the little noise, the little noise that makes a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort, a little restriction in movement. And if you knock it on the head early enough, then
absolutely, it's all about, you know, ideally prevention, but if not prevention, catching things earlier on. So, you know, we don't just all of a sudden wake up and we've got Alzheimer's.
No.
You know, we don't just wake up and we've got high blood pressure or you know, heart disease. These things are happening very early on, and you're getting very small symptoms. You know, that often the amount of people I get come to me who say, you know, well, I've got wind, but you know, everyone has wind, don't they? You know, my whole family make fun of it. You know, no,
that's not
these
normal.
things aren't, you know, we normalise a lot, and also we put, you know, we only have to be a certain age, and go, oh, well, it's because of my age, and you know, we start to normalise things that actually are your body trying to tell you.
And the typical one, of course, is pain. A lot of people normalise a certain level of discomfort.
Or numb it. With, you know, I'll just keep taking Nurofen, paracetamol, which incidentally are the very things that affect the gut microbiome, that cause the leaky
medication
gut,
is one of the big ones.
You know, reduction in hydrochloric acid in the stomach or an increase in it. You know, we're always looking to put sticking plasters on things, and in a way ignoring it, and then you're just then having to deal with something even worse. Then you go to the doctor and have a drug that you take and ignore it, you know, and this is what you're happening when you, which is why for me, you know, one of the key tools that I use is doing a timeline right back to birth, even before birth. I look at mother's health, I look at what the pregnancy was like.
Because as I've explained in a previous episode, is that's actually where you get your initial gut health, from your mother as you pass through the vaginal canal, or if you were C-section, whatever you've come into contact.
It's the skin, you know, it's the skin.
Whatever you've touched, the siblings.
It's a completely different microbiome with a baby that's vaginally delivered and a baby that's C-section. So that straight away, and especially if they're not breastfed, you know, they've got much higher incidence of asthmas and eczemas and
and my son was vaginal and breastfed, and he has asthma and eczema. So it's just there's no judgment, but there is a difference. These things have an influence, you know. Then of course lifestyle comes into it, you know, the environment you're in, the foods you eat. But, and I know this is a big thing you're passionate about, we were talking about before, is that what's so wonderful about this information coming out is fantastic, but the problem is people tend to look for what's the one takeaway message, you know, what's the one thing I just need to do, I just need to take that. And so nutrition is one of the elements of managing your gut health, but again, it comes down to individually what's right for you. So we could say what's textbookly, well, you know, what from a textbook point of view, what serves your gut health is a mixture between raw and cooked foods, but the individual may be slightly different, right?
Absolutely.
And so
all about individualized. And that's where it becomes difficult, because, you know, people are bombarded with information now, whether they're, you know, whatever their choice of information is, reading newspapers, listening to the news, they follow somebody who's got a blog, you know, they're on the internet, and they're getting all this information, and so, you know, in their mind, oh, well, I need to be having fermented foods, I need to be having bone broth, I need to be having loads of coconut oil, I need to be, you know, whatever the latest person is saying you need to do, and they kind of each week it's like their new thing that they're starting, and then they come and they say, but I'm not, you know, I'm not getting any better. And it, you know, that makes sense to me, because you know, the person that they've read or the news article they've read isn't looking at their specific individualized need. You know, even down to, you know, which is now a big thing in my area, you know, it's down to their genetics. You know, genetically we all manage different levels of carbohydrate. We've got different levels of carbohydrate sensitivity, and you know, so
dairy sensitivity, lactose, all of that is Asians in general don't tolerate that as well. So there's the genetic influence. But I mean, exactly what this whole gut health and microbiome thing should highlight is just how unique your own health status is to you. Because and I made the point in a previous episode, is that while you and I may share a lot of DNA that is very similar, up to 99% or something, our gut, any two people's gut microbial DNA is only
like
5%.
It's really so like a fingerprint. It's totally unique to you. You know, and we know Western populations have less diversity, which they're actually seeing as partly a problem. You know, obviously in the West we do get, you know, our health tends to be worse, because we're not getting this diversity in population. But you know, a lot of that, if you think of the amount of antibiotics that we have, I mean, you know, in any year, you know, the average person has 2 courses of antibiotics.
And just to clarify, antibiotics, anti-bio, anti-life, they sent in to kill off everything. In the hope that you get the pathogen or whatever is causing the illness, and then once you've had that course or had your gut has to repopulate its microbes.
Bad diet, and you've got all the stress, and everything else.
And also, you know, this what I was reading too is that if I decided to change my diet today from whatever I eat to really bad, or let's just go simple. So from tomorrow I started being vegetarian. Rightly or wrongly, there's no judgment there. What I'm just saying is within 24 hours, my gut microbiota is already beginning to change in response to my change in diet. That's how soon it is. So you're right, sorry. So the antibiotics and overuse of it means that every so often somebody, most people having to say 2-3 times a year, you're killing off all that bacteria, all that, then whatever you're eating is repopulating your next lot. And that's not in a great state because probably you weren't eating well in the first place. And so you go just from bad to bad to bad to bad to bad,
And some children start out very early, you know, because they'll have the throat infections and the ear infections, and they're already starting out having antibiotics. But it's not even just the antibiotics that we know we're having. You know, in food industry, you know, 1.3 times more antibiotics are used for animals
in the meat.
You know, so if you're eating your regular kind of, you know, supermarket meats, they're already high in antibiotics that you're taking.
That you're consuming anyway.
Animal. But also, you know, there's the grains that we eat they will be sprayed with glyphosate, which is found, you know, in your herbicides. They use that as what's called a desiccant in grain, so to dry the grain so that they can harvest it more quickly. So you've got the direct ingestion of the grains. You've then got the grains that the animals are fed, which have also
been affected.
And often it's GMO grain that they're eating as well, because they don't have to
modified.
Although in this country we say, well, we don't use GMOs. They don't have to declare the fact that the grains can be GMO to be feeding the animals. So you've got what the animals being fed. The glyphosate, they've found, acts as a low-level antibiotic in our systems. Wow. So, you know,
over time,
and it causes gut permeability. So you've got this sort of perfect storm, really, of, you know,
I mean, it sounds doom and gloom. It does, but what I think what you're trying to highlight, of course, is that you aren't as in control about what goes.
Knowledge is power, because once you know those things, you can start making choices to, you know, avoid and, you know,
and
do
correct
things that you can help. I mean, I've read some research this week which astounded me, not to put more of a downer on things, but you know, they've done some research on, because obviously antibiotic resistance is a huge thing now. We've overused them, and so now all the bacteria are becoming resistant to it. So they did some research on the bacteria E. coli, and Listeria was the other one. And, you know, they found that Wi-Fi and electromagnetic frequencies from mobile phones cause those particular bacteria to become resistant to antibiotics, but also to grow, an increase in growth because of the EMFs and the...
I think we just have to lock ourselves up in bunkers, I think.
Which is really quite
scary.
It's
scary because it's everywhere.
But it makes sense as well.
But, you know, I remember not too long ago, and I mean, I'm not even that old, that's what I'm just saying, how quickly it's progressed, is that when Wi-Fi was just coming out, there was a lot of controversy about, just because you go anywhere now, it's in the supermarket, it's in the coffee shop, as we're sitting here, the Wi-Fi is there. And there was a lot of pushback about this, just having this frequency just here. And everyone was like, oh, just relax, just relax. But eventually we have to come to the point where, I mean, if we could see it, it would just be, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, maintaining your gut health in this world where everything's thrown at us is so, it's like we're climbing an uphill battle here. It's a point of making good choices food-wise, and there are a lot of people who do know, who are providing as wholesome, healthy stuff as you can. And I know that part of one of the services, certainly your nutritional services that you do, is you actually go shopping with people, which I love that.
Yeah, because often people
get
overwhelmed. They go into the supermarket and, you know, they kind of, I look on the back and I don't know whether that's so.
And what's naughty is a lot of manufacturers do, you know, will say free from, and then you think, oh well, then it must be good, but actually turn it over, and there's so much rubbish in it. It's not even healthy.
It means nothing.
It means nothing.
Well, it, you know, okay, it hasn't got gluten, it hasn't got dairy,
but guess what?
It's got everything else.
You
know, so again, it doesn't mean that it's healthy, and I think we sometimes imagine if it's free from that it must be healthy, and you know, really you want to be doing most of your shopping on the outside of the aisles, which is really where all the fresh produce is, your meat, your fish, you know, and really avoiding all the packet tin, you know.
The other thing that's difficult, exactly, you know, often the thing is that, you know, only put in your trolley or your basket what your grandmother would recognize, or that, you know, that sort of logic.
Yeah.
And also, of course, look, you're not going to get it right all the time. No, you know, the body is a little bit more resilient than, you know, we make it sound right now. But overall, you want to make sure that most of your meals you're getting are chemical free, if not necessarily organic, locally sourced. Those kind of things do sort of eliminate some of the bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, so that's just your own way of managing it and helping it.
Yeah.
I know that you do lab testing. If people come to you with suspected digestive or gut issues.
Yeah, I mean, you know, going back to the process of doing the timeline, you know, you're first trying to, first of all, so that will happen in my first consultation, because what I'm trying to do is establish what things have played a part
what's
in
where you are
now. And I could have, you know, 20 people come to me with IBS-like symptoms, and I will treat 20 differently, because it's a symptom. It's up here. It's a symptom.
It's the tip of the iceberg
that's happened under here. And where I'm trying to get to is what's happened here. Yeah. So, you know, and I work with different people's budgets. So, you know, if somebody can't afford testing, you know, then I will kind of start with my best synopsis of what I think is happening, and we'll kind of address one of those. But some people just say, look, you know, I've had this forever, I'm fed up with it, you know, just whatever testing you want to do, just do it. So, you know, we'll do food intolerance testing. You know, I've had some good results with that. Like anything, it's not 100%, but there's some good research coming out about it now.
And what are they providing for the food intolerance testing? What sample?
So they're doing a blood prick test that they do at home. And then that gets put into, you know, a test tube and sent to the lab, and then they're testing that. I found it clinically extremely useful. And often it helps people having something in black and white.
Absolutely, it makes it real.
To know what to take out. I mean, the whole idea with food sensitivity is that you should be able to add those foods back in, usually after 3 to 6 month period, when you've worked on the gut, you've helped that gut permeability. You know, the difference is it's not working on a food allergy. You know, it's a different part of the immune system. They're two very different things. But food sensitivity, you know, if you are reacting to foods, you are instantly causing your immune system to react. You know, where we're wanting to dampen down that immune system, calm the immune system down, and not keep perpetuating this permeability in the gut, we need to first take those foods out. So we're taking pressure off the immune system so we can do the work we need to do. So that will be one test that I do quite frequently. Another obvious one will be a stool test, where again they do that at home.
No, it's just as gross as it sounds. I mean, people always go.
Yeah, anything to do with, I mean, people just in my industry, you know, we love talking about poo, let's face it. But you know, I try and encourage people to say, look, you know, your poo is giving you a lot of information about what's going, you know, like we talked about the wind earlier on, you know, by looking at your stool.
Everybody looks back in them. So you do look at your poo. This is just the more you get.
I don't know if it's men that tend to be more squeamish than women, actually, but I don't know if you can see it here, but I've got what's called a Bristol stool chart.
Yes, yes.
You know, so I always ask
someone
people.
sat and categorised the poo. I love it.
I know. It's great. It's a really good, it's a free source of information. And it tells us what's going on. Are we more constipated? Have we got more of a, you know, a diarrhea?
I don't know if you can see it, but it's just describing this poo in, you know, little balls, like all clumped together, sausage shape, just different various shapes, and telling you that's what has been classed. I mean, that is used as a medical thing.
Yes, this is a medical,
medical reference.
Gastroenterologist. Yeah.
But looking at the poo can tell you so much.
It can tell you, so I encourage my clients to make a note, because that tells us what we're doing, whether we're getting any benefit, whether we're getting improvement. You know, so that's often one of the markers that we will use, you know, if we're not going to use any testing. But the stool testing, they have to collect samples of their own stool, put that in test tubes, send it away. You know, we can get some useful information as to what might be going on in the digestive tract. You know, whether we've got an inflammatory process, which could be an indication of irritable bowel disease, you know, like ulcerative colitis, you know, or Crohn's, you know, so we've got inflammatory markers there. We're looking at whether you know, what kind of amount of lactobacillus or bifidobacteria we've got.
Because what would that potentially be an indicator of?
Well, it's just that there's not a balance there.
It's
so, you know, we can then give specific probiotics that might increase those. Something called Secretory Iga, which is it's a sort of a first line defense, really, that, you know, is found right in the mouth all the way through in the mucus lining. You know, if that's very low, you know, that can give us an indication that the immune system's not, it's not working properly. You haven't got those centuries stood seeing what's coming in. You know, or if it's very high, it can be an indicator of chronic stress or chronic infection.
Overreaction.
If we've got you know, an over increase of certain yeasts, certain bacteria, pathogenic bacteria, those can show up.
So you mentioned also they're finding out about, you know, those different levels of bacteria and then giving a specific probiotic. Now, probiotics, I love them, I've used them, but there is also an element of understanding that sometimes probiotics aren't necessarily helpful. You know, taking the oral.
Not
just probiotics are then the or should be the live form of the bacteria that then you take. But I think they dry freeze them, and that's why quality makes a big difference.
Absolutely,
big difference.
They've got to pass through that. You know, your stomach should naturally be acidic.
Yeah.
So they've got to
survive
pass through those. So, you know, I always look for brands that have got good research to show that they have tested to see the survival rate after going through the stomach area. You tend to get what you pay for with
probiotics.
But also it's the, you know, it's the amount, you know, whether they're in the kind of the millions or the billions, and it will usually say on the front. There's different types. It's soil based as well, you know, and it's still new.
That's a little bit mindful, but what I'm saying, while you can pretty much, I say get away, you pretty much, most people who take probiotics either feel nothing or do get benefit. But when the way we're using them there, that ideally is where we want to get to one day, is where you're going, right, we've now decided that there's a lack in X, Y, Z, so now let's replace, because actually, for what your body's going through, perhaps you don't need, I don't know, this probiotic.
No, this is it. You know,
there's no point in populating
for them.
So what we're getting to, where the science is coming to, is being able to try to decide if a condition is as a result of a lack of that bacteria or too much of that bacteria.
And I think we're not there.
We're not quite there yet.
But there's some good research,
good
studies coming through.
So once again, it comes to probiotic that I've used them before, so hands up, and I've prescribed them as well. In a way, you're probably better again going through the food route. let your body trying to get those, because probiotics, there's probiotics and prebiotics.
Yes.
So
probiotics are feeding the bacteria that are already there. Really.
But your probiotic will come in foods that then once they are can't be digested by the body, but once they hit the colon are then fermented and fermented by the bacteria and create some of that. So
and there's a lot of interest in fermented foods again at the moment, and going back to because culturally, every
every traditional diet had some kind of fermented food.
Because we didn't have refrigeration.
No. It's a way of preserving in a way.
And so there's been an increase in popularity with having, sauerkraut and kimchi and the different sort of fermented milks and they can be beneficial for people. But also they can cause a lot of problems for others, because actually if you've got what we call a dysbiosis, and by dysbiosis we mean where the balance of bacteria is out of sync. You've got kind of more pathogenic bacteria than good bacteria. If you give a lot of fermented foods, the bad bacteria will thrive on that as well, and so you can increase gas and stomach distension problems, pain associated with that, and wind. And so it wouldn't be my first. I don't go straight.
And it's quite a hard.
So it's quite to begin with.
You just hear the names: kimchi, kvass, kefir, all these things.
Yeah.
Right? They are kimchi, particularly, is a Korean thing.
That's
these
right.
are specific to those traditional diets. So it's true to then say that typically somebody with that sort of heritage would almost be more. It's not to say that I can't eat kimchi or something, but it wouldn't be a far stretch to assume that I'd struggle with that initially. Perhaps my bacteria has changed, but sometimes that's the level too. But I think, as with all these things, even the probiotics, the fermented food, I love the taste of sauerkraut. I love it.
So do I.
And I don't have a problem with it at all. It also helps. I particularly like eating it with meat because it helps to digest the meat.
Yes.
I can almost feel that in a way.
Yeah.
But that works for me. And I think with any of these things, it's a case of looking at how your body responds.
Yeah.
And again, pain, bloating, those sort of things, maybe we have to question.
I think probably if I had to generalise, I'd say the more issues you've got, probably you're better not to do those things first.
Right away. Yeah, that's a good
So, if I'm working with a client who's got a lot of digestive issues, we're first looking at what we need to remove.
Yeah. To give it a break.
Yeah. Before we're looking at working on sort of re-inoculation and rebalancing and repairing. We've first got to look at what we've got to remove. And so that might mean, antimicrobials to work on that dysbiosis. You've got to do that before, because you don't want to feed something and increase the bad bacteria as well as the good.
Because you can't separate. You can't send it down there and say it's only for the good bacteria.
Exactly. Yeah. So and obviously we haven't talked about sugar, but sugar in itself is going to feed the bad bacteria.
Everybody down there is enjoying that.
So you've got to look at sort of a systematic order to do things in, and I think this is where people are trying to just sort of treat themselves. They're kind of grasping onto these things, and actually not working to what is specific to them. It's fine if you've got no issues at all, you're really healthy, then you can probably, eat all the fermented foods and the prebiotics, the probiotics, and not have a problem.
And like with any of these things, especially with the fermented foods, and it is easy to make, and with any cooking, that it's quite nice when you've made something yourself, and often then it leads you down a research path. I think sometimes that's useful too with fermented food. People really start paying attention to what's happening in their gut. So there's not a no to anything, but I'm hoping what we've highlighted here, of course, is that it is quite individual, and don't be sort of thrown if, well, I've been eating all this fermented food and I'm not feeling better,
or I feel worse.
Yeah, or I feel worse.
Exactly. Worse with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's about establishing where you're at in terms of your own symptoms, and the more symptoms you've got, really, you probably need some help, because trying to do it by yourself. Other than, if you're going to
just make sense of it, to make sense, understand where you're coming from. And then to realize that, nutrition is the most obvious and one of the biggest areas to sort of influence your gut health. But reducing stress exercise and aerobic, oxygen intake, that changes your gut bacteria. Sleep changes your gut. All these things, play a part. And that's, I think, what in all my videos and things that I've tried to make the point is that I wish it was as simple as this is the one thing you have to do, and that's it. It's a dynamic thing, and you're going to get it right some days and you're going to get it horribly wrong other days,
Yeah, and you've got to get the foundations in place. A lot of what I recommend to people and talk about don't cost anything.
No, exactly.
It's your foundations. It's the food you're eating. It's your sleep. I'm putting emphasis on sleep. It's your hydration.
Yeah.
It's your stress levels, your emotional health.
Exercise doesn't involve necessarily going to a gym. You can go for a walk.
You don't have to spend a lot of money
kids.
to do these things. Even dietary. Obviously, I'm going to recommend organic and free. Free from all sorts of things, but it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You just have to look at, okay, well, maybe I need to reduce the amount of meat we're having, but have better quality meat, reduce the fish, have better quality fish, buy organic vegetables. If I can't buy all organic, which are the ones that are most heavily sprayed, and just buy those organic. So I work with wherever somebody's at in terms of their finances, time, and inclination.
Yeah, because it's got to be it's got to be, let's try to do it. Let's do it, rather than, oh well, sorry, off you go.
The only people I can't work with really are those that do come to say, just give me a pill, and I don't want to change it. I don't want to waste their money.
No,
I don't want to take
their
money.
They want to come away educated. The client should come away educated, informed, and sort of guided through the process, and then knowing, sort of having a bit more knowledge that you look at things differently and question. You may not have the answer, but at least you know what to question. And that's what I hope they've got from today. Thanks, you've been so informative, so helpful with that.
Absolute pleasure.
You're on Elizabeth Cappetta, Cappetta.
Yep,
P.com. And they can contact you by email if they have any questions or if you want to see you. But
people can find me through my website. So
thanks so much for joining me. That's very brilliant. Thanks,
Thank you.